Is the Conservative Party of British Columbia a pack of hateful bigots? Or political champions for citizens demanding parental rights be respected in order to maintain their child's innocence as they earn an education? Let me know what you think in the comments after you watch this report and interview with leader of the Conservative Party of B.C, John Rustad.
Clearly, now we have three left-wing parties in the legislature, the Green Party, the NDP, and the BC United, and they are not standing up for parents. They're not standing up for what's right. And, I look at it this way, and people need an option in this province. They need to be able to have somebody that's just going to stand for what's right and fight for the average everyday person. And clearly, they're all on the other side of center in terms of this. And to me, that gives us lots of opportunity as a party. But it also means that we are the only ones who are officially opposing this NDP government and their policies.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and BC politics have been spicier than normal the past couple of weeks, and many have had their eyes on the Conservative Party of BC as they boldly speak out about one of the biggest parental rights battles of the times. On September 20th, Rebel News brought you nationwide coverage of the Muslim-led 1 Million March for Children, which you can find at our website called stopclassroomgrooming.com. That protest attracted a diverse group of over 10,000 British Columbians across 27 different cities who were all publicly united in their concerns about the sexualization of children happening in schools. A primary culprit to this issue in BC is SOGI 123, the province's fluid sexual orientation and gender identity program that's embedded in districts across Western Canada, and among other concerning things, has paved the way for sexually explicit books like the ones you're seeing on the screen as SOGI inclusive learning resources. Yet take a look at BC Premier David Evy's response to John Rustad using the party's first question in the House after gaining official party status to reflect parents' concerns about SOGI.
Thousands of British Columbians, many of them from minority communities, have been protesting against SOGI 123, which was originally introduced by the BC United Liberals. Parents are concerned about the sexualization of their children in this NDP government's education system. Will the minister admit that SOGI 123 has been divisive, an assault on parents' rights, and a distraction on student education?
Premier. Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I welcome the member to the House as the leader of his new party. But I got to say, this is not an auspicious start. When you talk about the issues of the day for British Columbians, cost of living, housing, we heard from the BCUP, healthcare, addiction, mental health, to come into this place, to use the authority of his office, his new party, to find a small group of kids in our province, to leverage all of that, to make them feel less safe at school, less safe in our community, to feed the fires of division in our province and bring culture war to British Columbia, it is not welcome. And when he sat on this side of the House, he supported those same policies, Honourable Chair. It is outrageous that he would stand here and do this. He sees political advantage in picking on kids and families and teachers and schools who are just trying to do their best for kids who are at risk of suicide, Honourable Chair. Shame on him. Choose another question.
Now, I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not. After all, the day before the march, Premier Evy took to Twitter to condemn the march that was advocating that sex activism, gender confusion, and cartoon kids performing sexual acts on each other be taken out of schools as though it was hateful. After all, the state knows what's best, right? I thought governments in Canada had learned from residential schools about that. Yet somehow Rustad is also getting condemned by MLAs and state choice media for publicly tweeting a correlation about that implies he has in fact learned from that past wrong. And so I've invited Rustad to talk about the backlash from that tweet that he hasn't deleted, by the way, and to get his thoughts on the fiery exchange with Evy during the start of the legislators' fall session.
When I think about residential schools, it's absolutely horrendous what happened to generations of kids. But people forget that the tool for bringing about residential schools was the Canadian government taking children away from their parents. Canadian government making a decision that they knew better for those children than parents. And whether it was even the residential schools or even the 60s scoop, The government believed strongly that they knew better. And clearly that had disastrous results. And so what I wanted to do is to remind people that there was the tragedy of the residential schools, and there's no question there. But to remind people how that happened, because government thought they knew better. And it was important, I think, to stand up and remind people about what happened to parents and families.
Well, and there are people who agree with you on that statement. You also have some who disagree. But they're connecting it to the recent march that we had, or we saw across Canada, where it was a parent-led march, the 1 Million March for Children. And we saw that a lot of people opposed certain sexual orientation curriculums like the one that's in BC, SOGI 1, 2, 3. So there's a lot of offense over connecting that. What do you make of people saying this orientation has nothing to do with what we saw in residential schools?
Well, I would agree in terms of the results. For children, it is very different. But the question I always ask is, so when is it wrong to take away the rights of parents? When it's perhaps 10 parents or 1,000 parents, or parents from a particular religion or parents from a particular race? I just think it's wrong that government should be thinking that they know better how to raise our children. And quite frankly, I don't think I can ever find an example in history that has had a good outcome. And so when I look at the current movement by parents to protect their kids, to want to be involved in their education, I'm very sympathetic to that, because I believe strongly that parents need to have that voice. They should have that response. It is their responsibility. It is not the government's responsibility to raise kids through our education system. The education system should really be focused on academics, and it should be teaching kids how to think, not what to think. And that's the same flaw that led to the residential schools. Obviously, very different outcomes for the people that were impacted by the residential schools than today, but it's still the same thinking, and to me, that thinking is just wrong.
Well, I actually tend to agree. I don't always lead with race, because I feel like everybody should be able to discuss this. If you're a Canadian, you should be able to discuss and have opinions about our history, our present, and our future. But I am Black and Indigenous, and there, to me, is a definite overlap between this orientation, this curriculum, when it comes to the parents. And we saw that during the march, who are saying, hey, this is teaching our children something different than our ideology, and as well as our spirituality, which is also part of the cultural genocide, if you will, that I saw one of your competing party MLAs, Eleanor Storko, speak out from the party that you were once a member of, which was the BC Liberals, now BC United. What do you make of the comment that she made, that you should be apologizing for this comment, and that you not only offended the Indigenous community, but you also offended the LGBTQ community?
Well, politics is politics, of course, but what happened today in the legislature really, I think, spoke volumes to what Eleanor Sturko tweeted about, when the BC United Party stood in unison with the NDP party, celebrating the Premier dodging the question, refusing to answer the question, and making accusations. What it tells me is very clearly now we have three left-wing parties in the legislature, the Green Party, the NDP, and the BC United. And they are not standing up for parents. They're not standing up for what's right. And, I look at it this way, and people need an option in this province. They need to be able to have somebody that's just going to stand for what's right and fight for the average everyday person. And clearly, they're all on the other side of center in terms of this. And to me, that gives us lots of opportunity as a party, but it also means that we are the only ones who are officially opposing this NDP government and their policies. So
what do you have to say? It seems like there's definitely something different that your party's offering when it comes to parental rights on this issue, but is there anything else you want to say that separates you from your competitors?
Well, I like to think there's a lot of differences, and we're going to be rolling those out, whether it's our stance in terms of how we're going to address crime, whether it's our stance that there is no such thing as safe supply, and decriminalization has been a disaster. We need to bring those to an end. Whether it's our position on how we should be looking at and supporting people with addictions. But more importantly as well is the economy. I mean, this government has driven our economy into the ground. They're running a $6.7 billion deficit. They've massively increased taxes. They're overspending, and the private sector is fleeing the province. There's going to be a lot of things that we are going to be holding the government task for, and a lot of things I think that people will be wanting to see the Conservative Party of British Columbia stand for going into this election. Premier Eby has promised the next election won't be until October 2024. Quite frankly, I don't believe his word. So if he does, great. That'll give us extra time to prepare, but we're going to make sure that we have candidates in place and that we are going to be prepared for a snap election this spring. Because, quite frankly, like I say, the Premier and the way he dodges questions and the insulting way he tries to attack people, clearly we just can't trust him. It bothers me greatly that the first tact of a left-wing party is to insult and to attack and to spread hate. That seems to be their tactic when anybody tries to oppose them. It's part of the cancel culture today, and quite frankly, it makes me very upset. And when I saw the counter protest where people were singing and chanting, get rid of the police hate our kids, the police are going to kill our kids, like those sort of things is nothing but pure hate.
Keep it going now. Because they're ugly. Because they're killers. They hate my kids. All cops. All cops. All cops. You guys are brilliant. I love you.
And it should be recognized as that. It should be unacceptable. The government should be condemning it. But instead, you've got public sector unions and, quite frankly, NDP MLAs that support and participated in rallies like that. And I just find that very, very offensive.
Well, it would be interesting to see what would happen in a snap election. But thanks for being on Rebel News. John Rustad with the Conservative Party of British Columbia. Thank you.
Thanks again. It's great to see you again.
Did you know that a second 1 million March for Children is being planned across Canada? And just like the first one, Rebel News will be deploying journalists across the country to give you up-close and in-person coverage of what really happens. And in order to do that, there are many costs involved. We don't take a penny from the federal government, like over 95% of media. So if you value those types of reports, please go to our special website called stopclassroomgrooming.com and donate what you can.